Take your stinking paws off me, you dirty ape.
You dirty ape. Keep your stinking paws off me.
You dirty ape. I just filed a Title IX complaint against you for that, Brad. I think this is a hostile environment.
Okay. Pastor Brad is going to make a brief appearance here, okay? Dear Lord, please help us as we drift apart from each other over something that we shouldn't be drifting apart from each other. That is the election. Lord, put your divine wisdom on all of us to not show our animosity to people who may not have the same viewpoints that we have, but to essentially be understanding in that we're all different people with different mindsets and different ideas of what makes a great politician. And dear Lord, please help them because they're violating one of your commandments, that being, thou shalt not worship false gods. Thank you, Lord. Okay. I say this because over the weekend, I had 3 different things that sort of hit me sort of weird. Okay. First off, I'm not going to say who this is, but I'm going on Facebook. I know you don't go on Facebook, but I found this on Facebook, and I found it a couple of times, and I found it very disturbing that people are sharing this. And let me see if I can find it. Okay, this is a thing which has, and this is one of these little posts that people, they share it, and people are putting it on their Facebook page, and it has in the middle of it has a series of 6 hearts, which are all in different colors. You know what that means? Okay, and it says, if I remove myself from your life over politics, it's not because we disagree. It's because your values and beliefs are a threat to the existence of people I love.
Wow. Talk about passive aggressive.
Well, I find this very problematic in that, once again, it's important that we have good leadership in our country, in our state, in our city, in our county, stuff like that. Okay, but when it gets to the point where people become, to the point where I don't have any more anything to do with you anymore because of the fact you voted for the wrong person. Now, I say this, and this is the thing that I found, which, and I'm going to see if I can play this real quick. Okay, this is I think this is from MSNBC, if I believe. Is her name Joy Reid? She has the thing called The Readout. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Joy Reid.
Okay.
Boy, she is a treasure trove of clips.
Okay, she interviews Yale psychiatrist, and the lady's name is... I can't find her name here right handy here. Oh, yeah, okay, her name is Amanda Calhoun, Dr. Amanda Calhoun. And she spoke to MSNBC host Joy Reid on Friday night. This happened Friday night. Okay, I'm going to play this audio. And I think it's going to roll a commercial first. I didn't pull this off. I should have done this ahead of time. But I'm going to play this audio.
And if you then meet somebody and they voted for the people who called you trash, or if you're Puerto Rican, and someone voted that way, do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood. And it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me.
Okay, John, your reaction to that. She's essentially saying, we're coming up in the holiday season. It's the 11th of November. She's essentially saying that if you have someone that you're a Democrat and you know that they're Republican, they voted for Trump, you should not be in the same room with them.
Yeah. So I have 2 thoughts on this, Brad. The first of all is, if you feel that way, goodbye. And you should let people like that exit your life. I think it's wildly unhealthy. And if people choose to subscribe to that, let them inflict self-harm on themselves by excluding relatives, friends, family, whatever. Number 1. Number 2, could you imagine, Brad, if after the 2020 election, you went to everybody who voted for Joe Biden in your life and you said, listen, I've been a small business owner for, roughly 40 years, or give up with your kayfabe age of 89. You've been a small business owner for, 60 years. And I can't believe you voted against. I can't believe you voted for more government regulation and incrementally higher taxation. That affects my livelihood. The word that woman just used was livelihood. What if you told people in your life, Brad, you vote for Democrats? That means higher regulation and taxes, which affects my livelihood, and I'm not going to speak to you anymore. Can you imagine how people would have looked at you, Brad?
They would look at me like, "What? Have you been smoking something?" Or you know,
yeah.
did you?
Or they would have said, "Brad is finally leaving my life."
Well, okay. Now her credentials are: she is the Yale University Chief Psychiatry Resident, Dr. Amanda Calhoun. She is working at Yale University. I would imagine she's a teaching professor. She's a psychiatrist, which, if I understand, psychiatrists are actually MDs. Psychologists are usually PhDs, and psychiatrists are usually MDs. I can't, to me, it's so bizarre to hear someone say that. This is your family, okay? You get together with your family, and I know there are instances where you hear this all the time. Talk to any police department; they'll tell you the fights that break out on Thanksgiving Day and things like that. It happens, okay? Uncle Joe shows up, and he's being antagonistic to Aunt Mary, and the two have words back and forth, and everybody says, "Hey, it's Thanksgiving, knock it off." She's essentially saying, take those people out of your life. Now, what you said is very interesting, because the flip side of that, let's do the Tony Colombo flip test. Let's say that like you said, that back in the 2020 election, a good friend of mine voted for Joe Biden. And I said to them, you know what? I'm a broadcaster, and under the Ronald Reagan, under the Donald Trump administration, we had this guy by the name of Ajit Pai, and he was working to deregulate the FCC, get rid of a lot of stupid regulations. Once again, I've told the story before. You've heard me talk about, to a large degree, we're still governed by the Communications Act of 1934, coming up on, well, it's actually 90 years old, okay?
90 years, yeah.
And he was getting rid of stupid regulations which don't have anything to do with anything anymore. But yet, now we have, under the current administration, we have the FCC, which is run by a Democrat, and this woman is putting all sorts of goofy regulations back in and adding more, okay? And I could say to the person, Joe Biden's he's going to put a new person in the FCC, and they're going to make my job tougher, and it's going to impact my livelihood. And I'm not talking to you anymore because you voted for Joe Biden. They'd go like, well, Joe Biden's the right guy to vote for. But I don't understand where this comes from, to the point where these same people who probably, espouse this type of thought process, they go to church on Sunday morning, and, they're reading the Bible, and they're seeing, they're hearing the pastor, his impassioned plea for everyone to, respect your fellow human beings and respect life. How in the world does this coexist when you're going to push somebody out of your life because of the fact that they voted not the way you thought? And not only that, how is it right that you impose your viewpoint on someone else? You voted wrong. You should have voted right. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. First of all, I doubt most of these folks go to church or worship in any way or have any kind of strong faith. So I would think percentage-wise, these folks obviously aren't following any sort of Judeo-Christian values in that regard. Secondly, I might be a little bit less cynical about this, Brad, because I don't think the head resident of psychology at Yale, or whatever her highfalutin DEI title is, I don't think she represents the average Democrat friend that you have and I have. I don't think so, at least not the folks who are very liberal who I'm friends with. I don't believe that any of them subscribe to that. And then I guess also, Brad, again, boundaries are not things that you force people to respect. You can't force your boundaries on people. Boundaries are things you set for themselves. And if someone in my life said, well, John, you are a MAGA-ite and you are a Trump person, and I am not going to stand for that, that doesn't affect my behavior at all. I might be sad about the fact that I'm excluded from their life, but that's their choice. And I think that they're just, this is top of mind because it's the election. But there have been liberals who have been saying this for a while, like if you, especially going into the general election, if you stand for Donald Trump, don't you dare expect to be a part of my life. Well, okay. Like, I wouldn't want to be a part of somebody's life. You get what I'm saying?
But I think more importantly, she's talking about family. She's
Yeah.
talking about aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas and things like that. That's family. Okay. There's a certain level of respect that you have, at least you should have, for family members other than just general population, because they are special. They're your blood, or maybe if you're adopted, they're not necessarily your blood, but you have the familiar ties with them that essentially transcends everything. I have people in my life that I know that still are very close to their siblings, and their entire life they've been close to their siblings. And thick or thin, they're there to, have their back and things like that. But yet there seems to be this intolerance for, and I guess the thing, over the weekend, I had a very nice text that was sent to me. I won't go into the great details, but it was a very nice text, and essentially was saying that I'm the kind of person that respects other people's viewpoint, and more importantly, I want to hear why they have that viewpoint. How many times have I told you, John, when we were running the talk station before, when I had Brian Nieves on, he was like Mr. Republican, Mr. Arch Super Conservative Republican, and he would have, because I was the owner of the station, I would have Democrats text me or email me or send me a letter. I can't believe what you let Brian Nieves on your station. I can't believe what he's saying. And I would always contact them and say, hey, you know what? Brian will be more than happy to have you on the air with you. You can give your view. No, I'm not going to the air with him. Okay, fine. I'll put you on the air. Let's do a show an hour after Brian's on the air, and you can come on and tell me, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be on your station. Once again, let's talk it out. Get together and get these things out in the open. Be open-minded. I find it fascinating that the people that I find fascinating to me are the people who don't think the same way I do, because I'd like to listen to what they say, how they feel about things, and sometimes I think to myself, you know what? That's a very valid point. And maybe
you might learn something because you were open-minded, Brad.
Right. Maybe I need to sort of look at how I look at things, and maybe there is something that I'm being biased on or stuff like that. Isn't that the true way of being enlightened and being informed, and essentially to not just put yourself in the echo chamber and listen to the same garbage all the time? I get people all the time say, well, you listen to nothing but, you probably watch nothing but Fox television. First off, I don't have a TV, so I can't watch Fox. I can stream it, but I don't. And not only that, how many times have I talked about, I'll come on the air and I go, oh, you're not going to believe what I heard on NPR over the weekend. Okay. Once again, I hear these things, and it's to the point where sometimes with the people on NPR, I agree with them. Sometimes I don't. But the bottom line, my common complaint with NPR is, it's my tax dollars that are putting those biased people on the air. And once again, Brad, they may say, how do you know they're biased? We go back towards our buddy again, Uri
Uri Berliner,
who wrote the op-ed in the Free Press, essentially saying there's not one single Republican that works at NPR. So what does that tell you? You know what I mean? It's to the point
and I think part of this, and on all these things, it's never just one thing that causes this. It's certainly not some academic from Yale that's causing this, but because of social media, Brad. You think about 30 years ago. Everybody was generally forced to have conversations with people at the workplace, at the dinner table, at Thanksgiving, of people who a percentage of them would disagree with them, and they had to endure it and put up with it and listen to other viewpoints. And they also had an objective sense of journalism occasionally that you would read. Today, you can get on TikTok, Brad, and if you wanted Kamala to be the first female president, you can watch TikToks all day long that'll make you enraged. And they're all people who agree with you ideologically and who tell you, ooh, Republican men are out to get us now. Don't trust them. Tell your family members to go to hell if they voted for Donald Trump. You can just surround yourself virtually with people who agree with you. You brought up a great point of the echo chamber, Brad. And because of social media, we can insulate ourselves and silo ourselves with people who only agree with us. And when they're feeding you rage all day long, no wonder you hate your uncle who voted for Donald Trump.
But isn't it, and I think this is the whole thing. She's talking about family. We're talking about the holidays coming up. Isn't this the time of the year when we're supposed to get together and we're supposed to put bygones are bygones? Hey, when 20 years ago when when we were in school together, you tripped me when I was walking down the hall and you embarrassed me, and I'm never going to forgive you for that, Uncle Bill, or you know what I'm saying? Isn't this Isn't this the time of the year where, isn't part of the whole part of especially Christmas is where we essentially, we herald the birth of this person who, majority of, well, I shouldn't say majority, but quite a few of the people in the world, view as their savior, as their God, as their, direction that they follow. And essentially, we don't have hate in our hearts. We have compassion and love. And essentially, we want to all get along. But no, this psychiatrist says, hey, if somebody voted for Donald Trump, you tell them you're not having anything to do with them and they can go to hell. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Brad, I'm going to, rare moment of personal reflection here. I'm going to a family event this weekend, and I'm seeing a lot of people in my family who I haven't seen for years. Brad, I have relatives who were far left liberals who I would rather be seated next to than my relatives who voted for Donald Trump. And God bless, some of them may be listening. God bless the folks who voted for Donald Trump, but I have some far left liberal family members who I would rather spend an hour spending time with and talking to than everybody knows a jerk who's a Donald Trump supporter. Everybody knows a jerk who's a Kamala Harris supporter. People that are jerks are jerks. I'm not going to view somebody. I'm not going to banish somebody from my life because they vote 180 degrees away from me. That's not something that's that important to me.
But once again, Pastor Brad puts on his hat. Aren't we worshiping false gods? Isn't the president?
Yes,
isn't the president of the United States a false god? Isn't Mike Parson and Steve Ellman and Sam Page? Aren't they all really, when we look at it, aren't they all false gods?
They are. And first of all, I would remind you that Joe Ortworth loves you, Brad. As you once famously told Elliot Davis, Joe Ortworth loves you. But yeah, this goes back to C Block on Friday, Brad. When you worship government, when you put government at the center of your life at a place where some higher power should be, then you get wildly offended when the people you don't like take her reign. When they take the reins of government, that's why you get so offended.
Well, not even in the center of your life, but the idea being that we are all human beings, and ultimately we are responsible to a large degree for how things turn out. I get it. There's fate. There's luck. And I had some bad luck over the weekend. I'll tell the story, and I'll come clean and tell the story on the next break. But once again, that's life. You get kicked in the teeth, and most people, oh my God, but the strong people get up and say, okay, what can I learn from this experience and keep moving forward? I've told you this many times. I read these business biographies of these famous people all the time. I love reading these biographies, the ones that you don't hear too much about. You see that they're this very important person or this great star or very successful, entrepreneur, stuff like that. And you read the fact that they just had a horrendous life and they just kept getting knocked down and get back up and moving forward. To me, those are my idols. The people, and even to the point where I've told you this before, I'm fascinated by people who have become addicted to drugs and addicted to alcohol and have turned their life around. They're going to AA meetings once a week. They've essentially confronted their demons and they are winning. Those are the people I find fascinating. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but that's the kind of people I like to be around. You know what I'm saying?
You are a weirdo, but none of the reasons have to do with that, Brad.
Listen to you. Flattery will get you everywhere. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?